Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teach Cloud's special webinar, Bringing the Outside In. We have been buzzing with excitement, especially when we saw how many of you wanted to go deep into nature play. We have some incredible experts with us today, and they're eager to share their thoughts and answer your questions. So before we get started with our amazing panel, just want to give you a rundown of what to expect over the next hour. So we're going to have about 40 minutes of enlightening conversation with our experts, and then we're going to have a lively Q&A session for around 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, pop them into the designated Q&A box. Should be at the bottom of your screen if you're using a laptop or tablet, and it will say Q&A, and just put in any of your questions there and we'll be able to answer them at the end of the webinar. Also, I've already put it into the chat. There's a certificate of attendance available, and if you're interested, you can purchase that on or before the 5th of October, actually before the 5th of October. So you have from now until the 5th of October to purchase that. And we also have other resources that are available to you in that chat. But just to give you a little brief overview of Teach Cloud, my name is Dr. Wendy Oke. I'll be officiating this webinar, and I'm the proud creator of Teach Cloud. My journey started during my PhD days, so back in 2017 when I founded Teach Cloud. And today our app stands as a beacon for thousands of educators and parents that are using it, from everything from parent communication to attendance to accident forms. So just wanted to show you a little bit of the software and the features that we have available, and just to launch our new feature, which is called Educator Pal. So that's available to everyone using Teach Cloud, and Educator Pal enables you to create learning opportunities and policies in seconds. So I'll quickly show you how that works. You select the age range that you want to create an open-ended learning opportunity for. There's lots of topics, so you can select any of those, and then you can link it to your specific curriculum or framework. I'll stick with the first one here. And then there's two other questions. You can decide if you want to skip those questions. And once you're done, it literally develops a specific learning opportunity based on what you have told it. So that's just some of the features available on Teach Cloud's childcare management app. But even if you're not using Teach Cloud's childcare management app, you can go to teachcloud.com and you can access all of our webinars in the webinar section. There's lots of free resources there for you. And again, if you go to childcare resources, there's some ebooks and blogs and different resources. And then the last thing for people who are attending this webinar, and all of that is in the chat. So if you're looking for any of these links, they're available in the chat section. There is something called Cloud Academy, which is our e-learning platform for childcare professionals, allied professionals, and also for parents. So with this, you have lots of different courses, creating and implementing open-ended learning opportunities, diversity and equality, or even supporting children that have gone through trauma. So if you're interested in that, that's app.cloudacademy.com, and a lot of the videos are free to watch, and then it's just the certificate that you purchase, and you can select see all courses to see everything that is available. So I am going to go back now to our webinar that is on today, and just start with a few introductions.
Hello, Teach Cloud Learning Community. I'm Nicole Corbo. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a nature-based education consultant, and I've been a nature-based educator for over 30 years. You can learn more about me at rootsandSkyLearning.org. I'm joining you from Washington State on lands cared for by numerous Coast Salish tribes, traditionally and currently. And I acknowledge that outdoor nature-based learning has been practiced by Indigenous peoples around the entire planet since time immemorial. Wendy, thanks so much for having me.
Well, that's a hard introduction to follow. Goodness gracious. And yes, my name is Katie. I am a mother of five. I have been working in early childhood education for 16 years, going from all the way from infants to school aged. I've worked with children on the spectrum of all different learning abilities. I have been doing nature-based learning for the past 4 years. So I'm kind of a newbie, And not too much because I've learned a few things, and I've just opened my very own nature-based programs this year called Wonder Forest School. I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Wonder Forest School. And thank you for having me.
The first question, I know it's kind of an easy one, but it's also kind of a hard one. So, what are the key benefits, would you say, and anyone can jump in here, for children, and how childcare professionals ensure it's implemented safely in an indoor environment?
Um, so when I first read this question, my brain expected it to say in an outdoor environment, but then you gave me a twist at the end with in an indoor environment. But I don't think I'm going to surprise anyone when I say that the benefits to risky play include, but are not limited to, things like developing confidence, developing resilience, developing an ability to delay gratitude, perseverance, ability to assess risk, building motor skills, physical development, emotional regulation, like managing fear and anxiety, cognitive development of executive functioning skills, learning how to plan ahead and meet goals and have a sense of self control and staying focused when there's distractions all around you. These are all some of the benefits, and there's so many more. But whether you are indoors or outdoors, I would say that the most successful way to ensure safety is through collaborative benefit risk assessment. And the short version of that is be in conversation with students. And I have a little bit of a methodology, but I don't want to take up too much time. But I will just say that the things you want to be taking into consideration whenever you're doing benefit risk assessment is you want to be thinking about the environment that you're in, what opportunities there are, what hazards there are. You want to be thinking about the person who's supporting the risky play, whether that's yourself or another teacher, that, like, your mental state, how much sleep you got, all of that goes into consideration. And then, of course, you want to be considering the student, the individual person who is doing the risky thing. What do you know about them and their capabilities? But just going back very quickly to collaborative benefit risk assessment, um, it's a combination of sharing your observations and utilizing inquiry to get kids involved in assessing risk. Um, and I want to give some space for Katie to respond, so I'm going to stop there, but I can always go more into it later.
Back on what Nicole had said, the benefits are absolutely endless. I know as adults, we all know risky play is beneficial, right? We all know it's brain food, but I'm pretty sure all of us have kind of sat back and like clenched our fist and like, oh my gosh, please don't, please don't, please don't. But they do anyway, right? And we know that that's a good thing. What I have noticed is that with a big thing is when she had said regulating emotion and trying to have them assess what is safe for them. I have been, it's a work in progress because we all know we get terrified too. But stepping away from be careful to what I say to my little ones now is, do you feel safe? Are you okay with going over there? Because, there's a thin line between encouraging play and encouraging, risky play in particular, to pushing too far and then they hate it altogether. And we don't want that. And when we try to do it inside, there are so many factors, and communication really is the key. You have to understand, especially being in centers, childcare centers or preschools, which I have been in. You really want to know what those regulations are because you don't want to start something and then have to end it, and then the kids are upset too. So just being able to communicate that with your administrators and, you know, providing a safe place for risky play, if that makes sense. Making sure, the kids are okay. And if they're jumping around, then, They're able to see and feel how their bodies are able to move, and that's part of the benefits of risky play, is having them be able to know how their bodies move and what risks they can take into their bodies, and try not to, um, step in prematurely, because then that takes all the learning away too. But yes, pretty much
And
everything.
yeah, love those answers. And that's why I asked for an indoor environment, because a lot of our preschools are coming from indoors. A lot of them are not forest or nature play. So just wanted to kind of put a little bit of a twist, like Nicole said. But I love those two answers. Katie, especially like changing our language, so instead of be careful, do you feel safe? I love that. And I love the collaboration as well, because with risk assessments, a lot of times we're kind of like on Teach Cloud, for example, you're sitting, you're ticking a box. Yes, we've done X, Y, and Z, but actually thinking of it in a different way, like collaboration and using inquiry then is absolutely phenomenal. I have a vision, I really want to get started with nature-based play. I have it in my head, but what's the actual easiest way to get started? So Katie, any thoughts on that? And then to Nicole.
Yeah, the easiest way to get into nature-based play is to go outside. That's the easiest. Don't overthink it. Um, Go outside. And when you're going outside, you don't have to make this big elaborate type of activity. You don't have to be, scrolling through Pinterest trying to figure out what's going to excite them, because going outside, why nature is the best classroom is because there's so many things that is out there that triggers the sensory system, and all sorts of types of learning, from storytelling, from, oh, that pine cone, did whatever. Just stepping outside, doing nature walks are really, really, really great. It was yesterday, actually. We were going down the trail, and there was a floating leaf. It was the first class of October, so it was a spooky leaf, and they were able to look at it, and we had a whole lesson about spiders and spider webs and why it's hanging there and how it's sticky and all this stuff. So you can get, and that is nature based, right? Because you're talking about things that are in nature, the critters, um the leaves that are outside, and that's all their natural environment, things that they see already. But yeah, you don't have to overthink it. I think a lot of us try to overthink it when we start, but if you go out there, involve the children. Don't go and collect things yourself. I think that takes away from learning too. But if you involve the children in prep and have them go outside and say, and it also helps with, making sure you have things that interest the kids too. And they go out and they find, these weird looking leaves, or, two sticks are never the same. So you can always compare with those. And then they bring them inside and they can use them for art, or, building things or things like that. So I think the easiest thing to do is go outside, take some nature walks, talk to the kids. Just don't overthink it. You don't have to make these elaborate activities. An activity is going to stem from being outside anyway. So that's what I think.
Concur. I want to highlight two of the things that Katie said. The Yes, the simplest way to begin is to just go outside, and also to utilize what the natural environment presents you with. Um, those are the easiest ways. And I would also encourage you to let it be relevant. So again, whatever is being presented to you in the natural environment, and let it be meaningful. So um, when I think about nature-based learning, I think about learning in nature, which can be anything. You take a book outside, you're reading in nature. Learning about nature, which is where it's environmental science education at its finest, and it can include all of the different academic subjects. But you're learning about nature. And then the most powerful one, and the one that I really want to encourage, is the learning with nature, where nature becomes the primary teacher. And 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 there is a meaningfulness to that, because it's not just about gathering random things from nature and using them. It's about connecting with them. So one of the things that I do when I go out with students, I address the other living beings like neighbors, whether it's a tree or that spider or the crow cawing. And it builds a relationship. And it doesn't get any easier than walking outside and saying hello to the different living beings. And I would just say, in terms of that, try not to misname things because we don't want to miseducate. But don't worry about whether you know the names of everything. It's better to say something like "hello tree" than, you know, calling a fir tree a pine tree or whatever. Um, and ask questions, utilize inquiry, ask them what they're noticing, see where their interests lead you. And you can always offer prompts. You can always offer prompts for engagement that meet the children's needs, whether that's inviting them, as Katie said, to collect certain things, whether it's inviting them to build with some materials that you find out there, um, or invite them to create something, to make some art with what you find out in the natural environment. But I just want to really emphasize to don't just use nature, to engage with it meaningfully. And I want to also encourage you to use things that are dead and down as opposed to going and picking live things. Because again, building a meaningful relationship with the natural environment so that we can feel like we are a part of it. But yeah, going back to what Katie said, the easiest way to get started in nature-based learning is to go outside and just start engaging. Really simple, really easy. Keep it fun. Let the kids' interests guide you.
With the asking questions, that is huge, because that is how you relate, or how you get those meaningful experiences, is because they can relate to it. And then you kind of get, what's in their head, and you can move on from there and figure out, where class is going to lead you next. And I do also want to say, because I know there are teachers out here listening from all over the world in all different types of environments. Um, you don't, and I think there's a question later about it, so I won't touch too hard on it, but right now. But don't compare your environment with other people's environment, because when you go in outside, um, whatever is out there is what the children are already, that's where they live. So that is their world. So, you can ask about the things that or go into it, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, you don't compare, because I used to compare all the time. I still kind of do. I'm not in a place where I have like waterfalls all over the place, and I wish I had a waterfall somewhere. That'd be so cool. But I don't, and the kids are probably not going to see that every day anyway. But I mean, even if it's like, the squirrels, they see squirrels all the time. And so when they see squirrels, I'll get texts or emails or phone calls, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, they told me everything about this squirrel, and they had a whole story about their moms and dads." But that is where it starts, and that's where that meaningful connection comes from, is just being able to be outside. And I love how Nicole said she acknowledges all of the living things, because we kind of do that in gratitude. We thank the sun for warming us up outside, and we thank the trees for giving us shade or protecting us from, I mean, and so I love that, Nicole.
Absolutely fantastic. And there's so many key points there, but just even touching on what Katie, you were just saying, don't compare yourself. I think sometimes people are obsessed with like Pinterest or looking at really pretty pictures. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like Nicole and Katie said, go outside. Like that's literally the first step. So absolutely amazing advice. Loving it. Educators promote meaningful connection to nature in an urban setting. So I know we said, just go outside, but sometimes, like, again, we got similar questions to this, but we're not really surrounded by nature, or we're in the middle of a city, or we're not able to go too far from the preschool because of insurance purposes. So what kind of tips would you give listeners?
So, when you have cities and there's not a lot of grass space, or you only have like city trees, or Everything is perfectly landscaped. Um, it is a little harder and it is a little trickier. But as far as like concrete, there's stuff there for like textures. How does the concrete feel? There's always going to be bugs around. You can look around for bugs that connects you to nature. I used to teach, well, I don't used to, but I teach these like mommy and me nature classes, and I used to teach out in like a city park. And the first couple of classes, I had so many treasures, you know. And then about the third or fourth class in, it was all gone. There was no more dandelions. There was nothing. So sometimes, as weird as it sounds, you may have to bring the nature to the nature place. So if you can't go too far out because of whatever regulations there are, if you maybe live in a place where you can find lots of treasures or like pebbles or something, you can bring them in. Um, but as far as it's not really nature, but it kind of connects them to their um natural world, is even with like signs, you can get learning from that by like counting or the letters on the signs. But there's usually, I can't say usually, but like city trees, you can use that. But like it is a little trickier, I think. Nicole might have a better idea about it, but I do think like textures of the concretes or bringing out chalk and seeing how that looks on different surfaces, or searching for bugs maybe, that type of thing.
Absolutely. And I think that where we have to start is we have to start by shifting our thinking about nature, because there's big nature, right? There's the national park, the waterfalls, the wild areas. But the truth is, no matter where you are on this entire planet, you could be in the most urban environment, the most paved environment, you are still in nature. For one thing, your nature, right? Every single one of us is part of nature because we're part of this planet. But also, and Katie mentioned this, no matter where you are, even inside, there are elements of nature, and it's just really comes down to meaningfully interacting, recognizing that nature is everywhere. It's the insect flying by, it's the tenacious plant that's pressing up through the cracks in the asphalt, it's the weather, it's the birds, it's the community garden, it's the park. Like Katie said a lot of these things, but I really want to emphasize the idea that nature is literally everywhere. And the more we're willing to move away from the idea that you can only engage in nature being big nature, and we move more into the idea of gaining meaning, or we move more into the idea of engaging meaningfully with nearby nature, like Katie said about the squirrel, like that, it's so much more meaningful because that squirrel is part of that child and your environment. It's part of your home, your space, the place, the land that you connect to. And whether that's in an urban environment or a rural environment, different places, the biome doesn't matter either, whether you are in a desert or a forest or whatever. The ability to address, to engage meaningfully in nature it's in that simple psychic shift, just shifting your thinking about what nature is and how we can meaningfully engage. Just, I already told you that I say hello to all the living beings. That is the first thing that I do. And I try to use their names if I know them. Ideally, and this is like, if you are willing to take this step, if you can use the first names given to the living beings in your environment, if you are willing to take the time to learn the indigenous language spoken in that place, since time immemorial, and you use those names. But like I said before, try not to misname things if you can. And again, asking questions, just asking kids about what they're noticing. I recently was supporting a preschool, very urban and also very traditional. Their outdoor area is as manufactured as it gets. Like the grass was astroturf. It was all paved, it was all covered. And within the first 5 minutes of being there, I engaged those kids, and it was also a really small space. We were getting down low and looking at the teeny tiny plants that had pressed up through the cracks. We went on a spider hunt around this tiny little fenced in enclosed area, and we were all engaged together, and it was based on their interests. But it was, I mean, you couldn't get a more manufactured environment. It was all plastic and asphalt, and yet we were able to engage meaningfully in the nature that was available to us. So it's possible anywhere.
The next question then, what are some practical and budget-friendly ways to create sensory-rich environments indoors, especially for childcare centres with limited resources? Nicole, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. I think that I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I really want to encourage that it be done meaningfully. So, Katie earlier encouraged everyone to, when you're gathering natural materials, to have the kids help with it. Now, if it's not possible for you to gather natural materials in your school space, like in your outdoor space at school, then by all means bring them from the local park, bring them from home. But when you engage with them, with the students, like, don't just bring in cones or stones or sticks, um, and just use them. Engage with those items meaningfully. Talk about where they came from. Talk about them as, what they were, connected to when they were alive. Um, and I think about bringing the outside in two different ways. First is what I just talked about, adding more natural materials to your classroom, but also, um, using more natural materials in sort of the creation of the classroom environment, whether that's more plants in the room for decor or plants for food. Growing herbs will provide a fantastic sensory experience for your students. And then also images of nature, and you don't have to break the bank on this. Plus, another thing I really want to encourage is community partnerships. Reach out to local businesses, whether it's the arboretum or the flower shop or the garden store, um, or the local arborist who cuts down trees or branches, and ask them to cut you some tree cookies that you can add into your loose parts play. Um, but yeah, I mean, the natural environment provides everything, and you can go out and get it for free. Just do it sustainably. Do it sustainably, do it responsibly.
Yeah, everything she said. um, yes, I know if you actually pull the I work with kids card, they really want to help. And I know there's a florist up the street from me that I definitely it's like, hey, do you have anything that's like almost dead that are not, and they're actually not almost dead. They're really great flowers, but they're just not quite good enough for the bouquets. They're willing. I mean, all they're going to do is toss them out, and that's free stuff too, right? Um, I also there's so many things that can activate the sensory system when you bring things in that aren't expect like recyclables. That's not quite nature, but it helps with this sensory play. Anything brightly colored, and have all these things like available all the time, right? Uh, and but yeah, like recyclables, I've used a ton of different recyclables, so you're not throwing it away, which is, good for the environment too. I've had them stick, acorns in like a container with a lid, shake them up. Don't have your coworkers kill me with that, but I've made so many different, like, noise makers. You can tell, oh, this one makes a softer sound, this one makes a louder sound. Why does it do that? Why do you think? um Also, anything with the smell, everything outside has a certain smell to it, right? And I love how Nicole said, growing foods or growing herbs, because those are all smelly stuff. Even going to like the grocery store and getting like a bag of beans or something that's like less than $1. I actually did one with coffee beans, and blessed the whole center for like a month. Of how wonderful that smelled. But that's all a sensory you know, um the
Experience.
ri-
Yeah.
yeah. And it doesn't cost anything. I mean, it does, but I mean, it doesn't break the bank at all. We're all poor. We didn't go into this field because we're gonna have a mansion in 10 years. So you just kind of get creative with it, and I love bringing just plant life in to the environment. Is also very calming and cuts down on behaviors too. But yeah, everything Nicole pretty much nailed that. So
Love it. And I think you were kind of alluding to that, like, collaboration with the community as well, even if it's just you going to that florist, for example. But how can educators collaborate with parents and caregivers to reinforce nature-based learning experiences at home? Because I think sometimes as well, some of the questions we got in were parents were kind of resistant to nature-based play, or they didn't want their children to get quote unquote sick or too muddy, or their clothes to get too dirty. So how can you kind of collaborate with parents, maybe ease any of those fears, and also kind of encourage them to do some of those nature play-based learning experiences, or even just go out with their child over the weekend?
okay, so I love this question because I've had to do this so many times where I've had a kid that comes to school in like Sunday best clothes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the last teacher that you want then. But I think the big thing is when you start building relationships with the kids, it's important to build relationships with the parents too. It is, you don't have to be best friends, right? But I feel like if you start building that relationship, there's a trust in there that, there's a trust. You feel safe being able to them telling you their concerns, you being able to let them know things. Communication is everything. I take tons and tons of pictures. Um, and I'm able to show that to the parents. I have like a little small group. Um, on an app, and it's all my parents in the class. And so I take all the pictures and I'm able to share weekly. And so they kind of get the idea of where, because we don't send a lot of things home with them, right? All the learning is at school. So, they're able to kind of see what's happening there. I have also made like play extension ideas, to where I'll throw out, say, have a it was fall equinox, with the harvest moon, and it's about to have the time change. For us, I'm in Virginia. But what I have said, we made like little lanterns, and they can take a nighttime walk, and it's like a family type, and it's still being out in nature, still being able to look up and see the moon and the skies and what looks different when it's a little darker out than it is in the morning time. And it's something that's actual quality time with their children, opposed to just, being next to them. But I think it's huge to be just the communication. Um, you know, if you do have a, messy day, being able to tell the parents the why is behind it. Sometimes they just don't understand what the point of it all is. And so if you make sure that you kind of teaching the parents as well as the kids, they can kind of understand where you're coming from. They start to see what's happening with their kids. They're able to go out there and do the same. But I think it's like communication, showing them what they're doing, showing them what you do, and maybe being able to extend some kind of play at home. Um, and yeah, around, communication.
1,000% yes to everything Katie just said. And I want to double down on that. I want to double down on that communication. Um, there's sort of two parts to it, and actually you really covered both of them. But I think about the upfront communication, before they even enroll their child kind of communication, that they know what you offer. Now, if you're, mid swing and you're making a shift, again, like communicating ahead of time so that they are in the know and you're fielding their questions. And this strategy for change is really, really effective. I do a lot of advocacy work, and listening to someone's concerns, meeting them exactly where they are, the same as we do with the kids, and then, you know, sh- showing them understanding, showing them compassion and understanding, and sharing with them the research that supports what you're wanting to do, your own personal experience with it, the experiences of others, and explanations to address their concerns. And then, again, Katie pointed out the providing opportunities for them to uh to to be outside with you. Maybe you do that lantern walk together, or providing opportunities for them to come see the classroom and to see the nature-based provocations that you provide and the language you use, the ways, some of it might be fear, it's safety concerns, and so showing them how you do that collaborative benefit risk assessment, showing them the language you use to keep their kids safe. And then putting ideas and provocations in your newsletter. That's something that I do. I end my newsletter with provocations for parents, things they can do, as well as questions they can ask to keep those learning stories growing. And a suggestion, keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it fun. It could be something as simple as suggesting, like in the springtime, I always suggest that families take a a sensory scavenger hunt in their neighborhood, a nature-based sensory scavenger hunt in their neighborhood. And I mean, you could do, honestly, it would be really fun to do that every single season to notice what's changing. And that will connect them with the environment more meaningfully. And it's simple. It's really simple and really easy. But part of meeting families where they're at is not just meeting their fears, those concerns, but also they might have, like, for instance, I've had families that, while they believed in what we were doing, they were not, like, they did not want to receive a super muddy child at the end of the day. And so I would rinse those children down, and I would peel them out of their rain gear and their boots and stuff and tuck that nicely so that the family's fancy car didn't get destroyed in any way. Um, or you might have a family that doesn't have access to, say, laundry at home. Maybe it's a family that has to go do their laundry at the laundromat, and they don't, like, the idea of having to go clean clothes all the time because they're getting muddy or dirty can be really challenging. And so meeting them where they're at and finding a solution together that doesn't put a burden on them, but supports them and also calls them in to why this is so important, why it's so beneficial to their child. And then, like I said, those provocations, offering them simple ways that as a family they can be connecting meaningfully in nature.
And I think what both of you all the time are saying, I know you're giving really amazing tips, but I think the key thing here is like collaboration and actually talking to the children and their families. That's really important, and getting to know them. So, like Nicole said, meeting them where they're at, that's like such a key term that I always think, because every family, every child is going to be different. So just amazing tips there. And I love how practical everything is. But I do want to just look at this question before we go into our Q&A, because we got this question a lot. And especially in the Republic of Ireland, in the UK, we have a lot of inspections where they come in and, people have failed an inspection, a safety inspection in childcare because they had a spider web in the corner of the room, inside the classroom. So what would your tips be?
This is something that we are actively addressing in Washington because we actually have licensure for outdoor nature-based learning. Um, and and we have a lot of childcare providers here who do both. They might have a licensed indoor center, and they also do a lot of outdoor stuff. But I won't go too far down that road. I just want to kind of double down on what Katie said, which is this idea of knowing the regs, like really being in understanding of what those regulations are, and knowing that you are an expert and there may be things that you know about nature-based learning that the person who is in charge of overseeing those regulations might not know. And so you have an opportunity to call them in. So for example, I'm going to use the spider example because I think it's such a great one. um, some spiders are not harmful to humans. And so if you knew that the spider in your corner was, let's say, a daddy long legs, you could, if the person came in and saw that and they were going to ding you for it, you could sort of like nip it in the bud and say, I want you to know this spider web is very intentional. We noticed when the spider began to build it, we took note of what type of spider it is. We know that this type of spider is not harmful to humans. And so we have left them here so that we can interact with them meaningfully. And that's just one example. So it's really it's what Katie was saying. It's like being mindful about what the regulations are, and then also making shifts, whereas when you're out in the natural environment, if you are able to go into the beyond area with your students, you're not going to be playing with wood that's been nicely sanded down. But in the classroom, you might have to, like, that might be, the natural materials that come into your classroom might have to be a little bit more um not manufactured, but maybe just, what's the word I want? Adjusted, I guess we can say. Say it again.
Manipulated.
Yeah, manipulated or adjusted, exactly. So that they can meet whatever those regulations are. But yeah, and work with your administrators, work with the people who are licensing you, um, because the thing is, and this is what we're really working on here in Washington, everybody has the same goal. We all want the children to be safe. We all want them to have all of their needs met. We all want them to be joyfully learning. Like, we all have the same goal. And so it's being rooted in that foundation, and then from there finding solutions together.
Amazing. And I'm just going to go to some of the questions here now because I do want to get to that. But just before that, just a golden nugget. The last question from myself. If there was only one thing that you wanted viewers to take away from this webinar, what would it be?
I guess don't overthink it. I mean, really, don't overthink it. Don't I have, it's always cool to kind of look at aesthetics. Kind of cool to have the cool Pinterest worthy activities or classroom. but it's not necessary, and the kids don't care. And just make sure that you're asking the questions to make those meaningful experiences, and being able to allow investigations and exploring each and everything that you're able to either bring in or go out and see. But just don't overthink it. Have fun with it. You're going to end up learning alongside the children too. And I mean, I guess just have fun with it. And yeah, just have fun.
Heck yes. Heck yes. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Keep it safe. Keep it meaningful. Keep it relevant. Um, and keep it fun above all else. And I want everyone to walk away just really being willing to lean into the idea that nature can be the primary teacher, and to be thinking about ways that that can happen. And also, ask for help. There is an international movement that is nature-based learning. There are so many knowledgeable educators and providers out there. So don't feel like you have to reinvent any wheels. Ask for help.
Ask for help and be confident that you know that this is a great way, and this is the way that children's brains work. And be confident in what you know as well, because yeah, I've lived in fear of my confidence for a very long time, not deep diving into things until literally last year. So it's that's huge. Be confident in what you know. That I liked how Nicole said this in a previous question, like, know that you are the expert in this. You know what you're doing. You've done the research, you've done the experimentation with, trial and error and all these different things. So just be confident in what you know.
Thank you for joining the TeachCloud webinar. If you're interested in using our childcare app for free for 14 days, visit teachcloud.com to speak with a childcare expert. If you have any questions on this webinar, email hello@teachcloud.com.